Yeah, so good morning, everyone.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. So long time no see. Have you all give the test or not? Given the test?
Yes, sir.
Everyone
Yes, sir.
done with professional ethics and tax audit thoroughly? Are you getting the confidence? Everyone got that confidence or not? That
Yes,
Yes,
when
sir.
sir.
come whatever the question be, we will be able to give the answer. Yes, everyone. Krupali, Nupur.
Yes, sir.
So what we will be targeting from now is standards on auditing. Again, a major chunk of our subject. A major chunk of our subject. Already we are done with what? Professional ethics and tax audit, which I told you is 5 and here of course 15. So 5 to 6 or here 14 to 15 approximately is leading to what? 20 marks. We are done with this. Now we'll be starting with standards on auditing. We are starting with standards on auditing. So in standards on auditing, I'll quickly tell you, already you might be aware, we have to do 200 series, 300 series, 400 series, 500 series, 600 series and 700 series. These are what standards on auditing standards, right? Before that, there are also other standards. Do you know other standards? Other than standards on auditing, there are also other standards. Like one we study, what?
Standard. Quality control standard.
Quality control standard, okay, right? SQC1, quality control standard. Similarly, there are also other standards like standards on review engagement, SRE. There are standards on review engagement. There are standards on other assurance engagement other than audit assurance engagement, SAE. Similarly, standard on related service, SRS, standard on related service engagement. That means other services that you are providing which is related to service provided by you, which is being non-assurance services. Non-assurance services. So I can divide this probably in two parts. That is what assurance and one is non-assurance services. So for assurance also, I can divide it further into two, three parts. One is relating to audit. So for audit, we have what? Standards on auditing. For audit, we have what? Standards on auditing. Then again, we have what? Review engagements. Example, limited review engagement. So for there we have what? Standards on review engagement. SRE, standards on review engagement. And similarly, there also we have other assurance engagement. So standards on assurance engagement other than audit and services, other than audit and review engagement services, other than these two, any other type of assurance engagement will be following SAE. Similarly, there are many non-assurance engagement, just like I told you what SRE, standards on SRS, standards on related services. So these other standards are there in our syllabus. We have to deal with what? Standards on auditing completely. As of now, till no new notification has come for your attempt, for your exam, do not get swayed by any sort of um, video or any sort of thing. We have to do what? Standards on auditing. That's it. Standards on auditing. And one is what? Standards on quality control. So we'll be starting now with SQC1. We'll be starting with SQC1 and then followed by we will be completing SA 220 and then we'll start with what? SA 210. Got the flow? SQC1. Then we'll be jumping straight away to SA 220 and then we'll be starting with SA 210. Assuming you have the basic knowledge of SA 200 from IPCC, I want you to come read and come back tomorrow from SA 200, which is nothing but what is confidentiality, what is professional skepticism, something sort of basic concepts which involves the audit, five fundamental principles of your code of ethics. Similarly, there are five fundamental principles, again same IOC P2, integrity, objectivity, professional competence, due care, same. So as a 200 concept I want you to thoroughly go through. Just remember this, go through this question deeply. Inherent limitations of audit. So I'm assuming already you have the basic knowledge of SA 200, because we in like in IPCC, I believe SA 200 everyone do quite sincerely. So I want you to come and read. Again, we will go through in not giving more than 10-15 minutes. Essay 200. So I'll be starting with SQC 1, then followed by 220, and then we'll be completing essay 210 for today. And if time permits, then essay 230 as well. So that is our today's flow. And daily we have to target um, chunk of standards, like at least 3 to 4 standards, thereby finishing according to our schedule. Clear? So let's start with SQC 1. SQC 1 and other standards on auditing. Firstly, I'll tell you a difference between SQC 1 and SA 220. Difference between SQC 1 and SA 220. Why there will be a difference? Because everyone later on you will be confused, sir, where to quote SA 220 or where to quote SQC 1. It is not very much clear from the question that the question is from SQC 1 or the question is from SA 220, because I'll tell you what, this SA 220 also deals with quality control standards only. This also deals with what should be, how should be your quality of audit. Similarly, SQC1 is also with respect to what? Quality control standards. But the major difference here is, if you just come across the standards name, actually I've put this SQC1 under the chapter standards and auditing, but this is not a standard on audit. This is not standard on audit. Just go through the name of the standard. Go through the name of the standard, you'll get to know why this I am not calling this as standards on audit or SA. Go through the name. Standard on quality control 1, quality control for firms, quality control for firms, for firms, that is audit firm as a whole, that perform audit services, that perform review services, review of historical financial information, or that perform any other services which is other than audit and review, other assurance services which is other than audit and review services. And similarly, that perform any related service engagement, that is SRS, edit any other related service engagement, any other related service engagement. So this in essence, I want to tell you what, pay attention, this is firm wide. This is firm wide. If I tell you this is firm wide, however, standards on audit, by the name itself is telling you what, this pertains to audit services only, audit engagement, audit services only. And therefore this is, I'll tell you, engagement wide or engagement specific. That means for this particular audit engagement that you were employed for, have you done it with proper due diligence, proper quality of audit, proper documentation, everything that we check into. But here the firm wide, it will deal with whether the firm has complied with all the quality control standards or not, whether the firm has complied with all the policies and procedures, whether the same has been communicated to all the employees, whether they have been trained, whether they are properly following the policies and procedures or not. So SQC1 is firm wide for all services, for SAs, for audits, for SREs, for SRS, all services. But here SA220 is engagement specific. First point of difference. Secondly, the main responsibility, if I talk into the responsible person or responsibility lies in SQC1 is with respect to CEO or MD of the firm. CEO or MD, managing director or managing partner of the firm, or equivalent. Here in SA 220, the responsibility is only with respect to engagement partner. That is, for this audit, I was the engagement partner. Out of total 10 partners, I was supposed to be the responsible, or I was the engagement partner for this audit. Then I will be held responsible. SA 220, every responsibility that is imposed on SA 220 has to be my responsibility, that is being complied with or not, engagement partner's responsibility. And here CEO MD of the firm or their equivalent, that means here the responsible person will be changed according to the engagement, who is the responsible person for the engagement, and that will be the responsible person for SA220 compliance. However, in SQC1 it will be what, CEO or managing partner, managing director of the firm. Is there any doubt till now? Getting the difference? Just to clear, what my approach is always is to get the difference before we start with the topic. So we'll be starting with SQC1 as well as SA220. But before that, let's clear out the difference, that SQC1 is firm-wide responsibility. SA is only for auditing services, audit engagements. Video is getting freezed. So let's just then start with what? Our main standard, SQC1. Very, very important standard. I'll tell you what, in almost all the attempts, you will find one question from SQC1. Other standards, keep it aside. You will find at least 3 to 4 question. One question you will find from SQC1, more or less. Out of every 5 attempts, you will find in 3 attempts. So majority, 60% of the time, you will find the question from SQC1. So very, very important chapter, very, very important standard. And as of last attempt, the question hasn't come from SQC1. So it is very, very important for you all for your November 2023. So SQC1, quality control for firms that perform audit and review of historical financial information and other assurance and related service engagement. So the name is not that difficult to learn. Just you need to be aware about what all services that as a firm you all provide, right? So I told you can be divided into assurance services and non-assurance services. So under the assurance services we have what? Auditing services, review of historical financial services, review of historical financial information, and then other assurance services other than audit and review engagement services. And similarly we have related service engagements as well, SRS, related service engagement. So quality controls for the firm which provides audit, which provides review engagement services on the historical financial information and other assurance and related service engagement. So that is the name of our SQC1. Not that difficult to learn. Again, if you will try to recollect with me, what it was that quality control for firms that provide auditing services, review on historical financial information, other assurance services, other assurance services, and related service engagements. I hope it's clear. Elements of a system of quality control. This we used to learn in IPCC, if you remember, by some or the other technique like Lehem or Mahel or Lehem Mahel. What is that? What all elements are there for SQC1? What all things have to be covered in SQC1? So you'll have to firstly see who is the leader. Neta kaun hai? Who is the leader? Leadership responsibility for the quality within the firm. I told you what? Who is the leader in our firm? Who will be held responsible for firm-wide applicability of SQC1, whether the SQC1 is being complied with properly or not? Who will be held responsible firm-wide?
CEO or MD of the firm.
CEO, MD.
Equivalent, right? CEO or MD equivalent, right? So that is that can be also asked to you in the MCQ, and that is what is given in the leadership responsibility for quality within the firm. Similarly, second is ethical requirements that needs to be followed, where we will study what IOC-P2. IOC-P2 is nothing but your ethical responsibility. These are what elements of SQC1, and third, acceptance and continuance of client relationships. So I gave you an example that whether if a client comes to you and tells you that, sir, I want auditing services from you, I want you to get my books audited, and for that matter I'll give you 10 lakhs. So you all then accepted immediately, you all accepted the auditing services from the client immediately, right? So according to SA 220, according to SQC1, I told you what? No, we don't have to act like that. First of all, we'll see whether the client has the integrity or not, whether the client's integrity is maintained or not, whether we are capable enough to do the audit or not, whether whether we are independent of the client or not, or are we related to the client. So all these engagement checks we have to do prior to acceptance of the audit or prior to the continuance of the ongoing acceptance. Previous year we accepted the audit, but right now for the next year, shall we continue with the engagement or not? So again, we will have to check all these checklist points, and then we will accordingly determine whether we should accept or continue the audit engagement or not, and that is what we will study here. And lastly, human resources point, whether in the firm everyone is happy or not, whether you are getting proper whether you are getting leaves for your exam, right? All the articles, whether you are getting leaves for your marriage or not. So everyone has to be happy. So human resources point have to be seen, and then engagement performance, how it is performed, and lastly the monitoring of this all these points. Monitoring. So monitoring all the points have been covered or not. SQC1 proper monitoring is done by the firm or not, that has to be given declaration annually. So we'll see each, not all the points, because all these point because we'll be seeing these points in detail, so we'll not be learning like this what are the elements of a SQC1. Although if you want to learn, nothing harm, but again, I don't expect a question like element of SQC1 or all the elements of the quality control standards. So they won't be simply asking, because the standards is on this point only. On all these points we'll have to go through in detail, in depth, all the points. In all these points, I'll tell you this point, that is what ethical requirement I won't be covering, because this that is nothing but IOCP2, so that is already covered. So see, we have to do efficient form of study, right? So if I just tell you how much big is each and every standard. So suppose SQC1, if we start going through all each and every point which is given in our bare standard SQC1. So this is page 1 by 33. That means what? This is a standard of 33 pages. And how many pages do we have in our book SQC1? So 4.5 or 5 pages. So that means I must have left something or the other from the bare standard, right? I must have left something or the other from the bare standard. So right now I am just clarifying the approach how we are going to deal with all the standards on auditing. Just please pay attention to this. All the points we are not going to cover from the bare standard of ICI. Definitely we cannot cover. Even if we can cover, definitely you all cannot retain all the points. Getting this, the first point of difference. Every point will not be covered. So suppose what all we will cover, what I think, I believe is being can be asked by the IC, can be tested by the ICA, because I know what can be tested and you can also simply predict what can be tested. Basically, whichever question you take from the past that has at least 4 or 5 points as an answer. So at least 4 or 5 points as an answer. So I have not included all the definition. If at all required, I'll be just communicating with you what is reasonable assurance, what is staff, who are or the staff, who are all the suitably qualified external persons. So every definition that I need to make you aware, I will tell you. Don't worry. Similarly, on the second part, like see, elements of system of quality control. So again, I told you what, I don't expect a question from A, B, C, D, E, F that they will ask simply what are the elements of SQC. Even if they ask, we are already all aware about the entire quality control standard, so we'll be able to write all the points. That is not a matter. So first, let's see, quality control policies and procedures should be documented and communicated to the firm's personnel. So this I have not included because that is in a paragraph form and that is already like self understood, or not that in a way that the question can be framed out of this. Getting the points that where from where the question can be asked. So if I say leadership responsibility, so here I have included all the points where the leadership responsibility, who is the leadership, who has the who is the responsible person. So the question can be framed in a manner of MCQ. So they can ask you in a MCQ way, who is the responsible person in the case, who is the leader, who will be holding leadership responsibility. So whatever point I feel important from each and every para in the form of MCQ, or in a way that you should be aware about that point, I have included that. But wherever I have found that okay, there are 5 or 6 points in a particular answer that we will cover in detail, because 100%, not even 99%, 100% of the time the question is coming from those parts where institute have given 4 to 5 points. So suppose here ABC 3 points are there, so I've not included this. But here, at least annually, the firm should obtain written confirmation. So for all these points which is marked in bold, or whatever I find in kind of an MCQ question, I've included it in the last MCQ point of questions. Similarly, these 2 point firm should establish policies and procedure for setting out the criteria for determining safeguards, and for all audits of financial statement of listed entity, I have not included this. Then acceptance of continuance of client relationship and engagement, this I have included because this is an important question where they ask this. See this, do you see 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 points are there with respect to integrity of a client, and this question they have asked in one of the RTP question. So that is what I want you to communicate, that not everything can be covered out of 33 pages. If we start covering 30 25 odd pages in each and every standard, then our auditing cannot be completed, right? As a subject we cannot complete. So what we need to focus on those points where we expect a question from ICI. And those all questions we will be, or those topics which have not yet been tested by ICI in any platform, be it RTP, MTP, those topics will also be covered, right? Secondly, that is with respect to our coverage. Second most important point that I want you to focus is with respect to, suppose if I go to question, so suppose if I go to November 2022 question, Recently came November 2022 question, last to last attempt, November 2022 question. So if you come here, this just talks about what? This talks about when you are withdrawing from the engagement. When you are withdrawing from the engagement, what all points you should consider, what all points you need to address issues that include the following. So just quickly see where the firm obtains information that would have caused it to decline an engagement. That means what? We have now accepted the engagement, but had we knew this earlier that this information would cause us to withdraw from the engagement if we would accept, or had we knew this earlier, we would not even have accepted the engagement. We would not even have accepted the engagement if before the acceptance we would have knew this information. That means what? If that information had been available earlier, we would not have accepted the engagement. Policies and procedure on the continuance of the engagement and the client relationship should include consideration that what are your professional and legal responsibility to communicate, to whom all you should communicate about your withdrawal, that you are thinking about withdrawal, you will be withdrawing from the firm, whom all you should communicate what are the responsibility which is imposed by you professionally and which is imposed by you legally by legal and regulatory requirement. Secondly, we will be withdrawing from the engagement because had you knew this earlier, you would not even have accepted the engagement, so we will be withdrawing from the engagement. And what does it say? Policies and procedures on withdrawal from an engagement or from both engagement and the client relationship should address issues that include the following. That means what? In your firm, in your chartered accountancy firm, in your CA firm, you should include policies and procedures which will address this issue, which will address the issues on the withdrawal, which will address the issue on the withdrawal or on these points. So the question that they have asked is, when you are wishing to withdraw from the engagement and client relationship, discuss the issues that needs to be addressed before deciding to withdraw. Before withdrawing, what all issues you need to discuss, what all issue you need to discuss that needs to be addressed as well before you decide to withdraw from the engagement, before you decide to withdraw from the client relationship, engagement or client relationship, because we are talking about firm wide we are also kind of having a relationship with the client, so also we are thinking of withdrawing from the relationship as well as withdrawing from the engagement both. So what all issues that you need to address. So one point I want you to highlight here is, in our in our class, the point, these 4 points definitely we will try to learn, definitely we'll try to learn. If we are focusing 100%, if we are focusing 100% on these points, I want you to focus 200% on this line, on the line just above the answer. Are you getting this? If you are focusing 100% on the answer, I want you to focus more than that, double the focus should be, double the amount of focus that you are giving to the answer. 200% should be the focus just above the line, just above the answer, the line just above the answer. So they will give you everything, Mahabharat, Ramayana, everything will be framed in the question. In the end I'll be including only that particular relevant part of the question which is relevant to identification of the answer. So the relevant part which was relevant for the identification of the answer was with this: discuss the issues that needs to be addressed before deciding to withdraw. And here you will not be able to identify whether this is coming from SA 220 or whether this is coming from SA 240 or is this from SQC 1, because nothing was mentioned which standard, from which standard you have to answer. So you need to be aware that from SQC 1 we have studied this topics, and in one of the topic we have studied this line as well, that policies and procedures should include certain policies and procedure which will address the issues before withdrawing, what all issues that we need to address before withdrawal from the client relationship or from the engagement. So this line was there, and by this you will be able to identify the answer. Identification is the foremost important point. Later on the answer will follow, definitely the answer will follow, but the identification of the correct answer is very important in standards. So the 2 point what I wanted to focus is, one, will not be covering entire bare act bare standards. Secondly, the line just above the answer is 2 times, or I'll say very important as compared to the answer. Are everyone clear with this basic thing? First of all, because in every answer I'll tell you to focus on the line just above the answer, because that is how you identify the answer. That is the exact thing they will write at the end of the question. End of the question they will write this simply by framing all the Mahabharat, Ramayana, Gita, everything will be mentioned in between the question, but in the last line you will be able to identify the answer if and only if you are aware about this last line, just line just above the question. Everyone clear?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
So let's just quickly now delve into each and every element. The first one being independence requirement. Independence requirement is the basic requirement that we will also see in SA 220. The question also comes from SA 220. Independence requirement, we have to have a policy and procedure that mandates all the staffs within the firm to be independent from its client, right? To be independent from its client, we have to have the policies and procedure designed to provide it with reasonable assurance that the firm, all its staff and personnel, and other subject to independence requirement, other persons who are subject to the independence requirement, for suppose example contractual employees, or for suppose you have hired an expert, hired an expert that will study 620 SA 620 other experts, and SA 500 that is management expert. There are two types of expert: management expert and other experts other than management expert. So management expert could be our employee, other experts could be out of the our firm. So even the firm experts, if they at all they are also required to be independent, then everyone who all are required to be within this independence framework should maintain the independence whenever required by the code, whenever required by our policy and procedure. And therefore our policy and procedure should require, that means in our policy and procedure it should include these 3 points. What 3 points? Engagement partner will provide the firm with relevant information about the client engagement, including the scope of services that we are going to provide to the client. So what all services we are providing to the client, that will be provided by the engagement partner, and by evaluating that we will then communicate to the engagement partner whether we are independent from the client or not. So engagement partner need to provide all the relevant information about the client engagement, that the client, who are all the directors of the client, who are all the key managerial person of the client. So I will be aware whether we are in any sort of way related to the directors or KMP or the company or the subsidiary of the company or the associate of the company, right? So all the client specific information engagement partner had to provide to evaluate the overall impact on independence requirement. First point, are we clear? Engagement partner will be providing with all the relevant information with respect to the client. Secondly, it personal here means when then not engagement partner but engagement team. There are definitely two set of persons involved here: engagement partner and one is engagement team. So engagement team is our personnel or staff, and engagement partner is the in charge leader. So personnel to promptly notify the firm of the circumstances or any sort of relationship that you may have with the client, or with their director, or with their associate company, with their subsidiary company, with their key managerial person, whatever be the information that you need to communicate, so that you are making your engagement partner aware about the fact that you are not independent, or any of your relative is not independent, what in any sort of way you have to indicate any sort of independence breach to the engagement partner. And thirdly, the accumulation and communication of all the relevant information to the appropriate personnel, that okay, since this person is not independent of our client, so we will not be engaging this person in our team. So everyone should be aware about that, the fact that if at all a person is not independent with the client, so we are removing him from the this particular engagement, or we are removing him from the particular client relationship, whatever be the case. So we have to be communicated to all the personnel, have to be communicated to all the personnel. So first answer with respect to what independence, for independence I told you what engagement partner will be providing us with all the relevant information about the client specific, all the relevant information. Secondly, we as a personnel will have to then evaluate how are we independent or not. And thirdly, it should be communicated to all the relevant personnel, should be communicated to the appropriate personnel. This is what is our independence requirement. So for this purpose, firm will have to establish policies and procedure to provide it with the reasonable assurance that it is notified of the any sort of breaches of the independence requirement. So whenever there is an independence breach, that means what, suppose Dhanlakshmi is not independent, so in our team Dhanlakshmi is not independent, so our in our firm policies and procedure should include all these points. That is, whenever there is a breach of independence requirement, so how Dhanlakshmi will communicate to us and enable us to take appropriate actions to resolve this independence breach situation. That means enable the firm, how will they tackle with this independence breach situation that has arise. And the policies and procedures should include the requirements from or for all who are subject to independence requirement. That means everyone who is subject to the independence requirement, the policy will apply to all. The policy is applicable to all. Policy should include requirements for the firm also to promptly communicate the identified breaches, should include the requirements for the engagement partner should include the requirement for other relevant personnel in the firm, and should include the requirement for the prompt communication, that is not a delayed communication. That means the communication should happen immediately as and when you are aware about any sort of independence breach. So policy and procedure should include information for the firm, for the engagement partner, for the engagement team or the staff or personnel, for any sort of person who is subject to the independence requirement. That means any person, whether be it covered under an engagement team or not, could be our client, could be our expert, could be any sort of contractual employees, be it covered under our staff, be it covered under our engagement team or not, they should also be aware about this. The engage policies and procedures should provide for everyone, should provide for engagement partner, engagement team, should provide for the firm, should provide for the any other person who is supposed to be applicable with every independence requirement, and lastly should provide for the prompt communication to the firm, right? So again the question, not not like, probably the question won't be from here, but if at all they want to ask, then they will simply ask what all things should be provided for, or your policies and procedures should include what all requirements should be included by your policies and procedure to adhere to the independence requirement as per SQC 1, or to identify any sort of independence requirement, any sort of breach in the independent requirement. Your policies and procedures should include all the requirements, what all requirements should be included in your policies and procedures within the firm. So should include the requirements for the firm, should include the requirements for the engagement team, should include the requirements for engagement partner, should include the requirement for the prompt communication. Clear? Yes or no? Everyone with me or not? Or slept? So till now we have seen independence, just a sort of MCQ that even ICI has asked in their MCQ booklet. What? That at least annually the firm should obtain written confirmation of compliance with its policies and procedure and independence from all firm personnel required to be independent. So annual confirmation has to be obtained with respect to what? First point that we just saw, independence. Annual confirmation has to be obtained. So what they can ask in the MCQ? Semi-annual confirmation is required, or quarterly confirmation is required, or annual confirmation is required, or no confirmation is required. Clear? So once you go through the MCQ, once you go through the question, you will then be also in a position to predict what question can come from this point if not yet been asked in any sort of platform of the ICA. Just like we just kind of framed a question, if at all ICI wants to frame, they will provide for any sort of identified breaches in the independence requirement. Your policies and procedures should include what all requirements? Should include requirements for engagement team, should include requirement for engagement partner, engagement team, should prompt communication, or any sort of other relevant personnel in the firm who need to take the appropriate action. Clear? Sony, again, why are you late?
सॉरी सर, थोड़ा लेट हो गई मैं.
What time are you sleeping?
Actually, sir, I wake up 5:30, but due to some emergency, I became late.
That emergency is that sleep, that 10 minutes sleep that you require.
So,
So now we have started with what? SQC 1. Okay, so you can go through half an hour portion after the class, the recording. Let's jump on to next topic, that is what? Acceptance and continuance of client relationship and specific engagement. So I gave you an example, 10 lakh audit client, 10 lakh audit client. Remember, you accepted immediately. So now we'll have to see what basis on what point I told you earlier as well, that whether we should accept the engagement or not, or whether we should accept the continuance of the ongoing engagement, previous engagement that we accepted last year, whether we should accept the continuance of that engagement or not. So at both the time we will see integrity of the client, right? How well he is reputed, what is the risk that he is into, what sort of business he is into, whether he is into all cash business that can hint us on money laundering. So everything has to be evaluated. Similarly, with respect to competency, whether we as a chartered accountancy firm will be able to complete this service, will be able to complete this auditing service in a timely manner, in a properly manner, whether we have that sufficient number of staffs or not, who are well trained, well knowledge, right, and with the practical exposure, practical experience that is required for the purpose of this particular audit. And thirdly, with the all the such of ethical requirements, whether we are ethically sound. And one more thing I told you was with respect to independence that we just saw above. Independence requirement need to be also seen before acceptance and continuance of client relationship or engagement. So we will now not dwell into each and every point, because all these 4 points is a question, separate question that we'll see in essay 220. Don't worry, that will separately address in essay 220. Right now we will go into each and every point, that is integrity, what all points you will see. For competency, what all points you will see, because a question can be framed by the ICI. So this question has already come in the RTP. Just go through the question. Just beside this, there is a question. Just go through this. And then what is the question? Firm started getting new clients and understand the extent of knowledge it will have with respect to the integrity of the client. So integrity, you should be struck about the integrity. It was mentioned in SA 220, it was mentioned in SQC 1, that we need to check the integrity of the client before acceptance and continuance. So that should, the ghanti bajni chahiye, the bell should ring, right? Will grow. With respect to the integrity of the client, you are required to give some examples of matters to be considered by the firm as per SQC 1. So as per SQC 1, you are to provide with what? You are to provide with certain examples of matters that you will consider by the firm. As a firm, you will consider for assessing the integrity of the client. For assessing the integrity of the client. So just see the question. With regard to the integrity of the client, matters that the firm considers include. So again, just the answer. If you see the question, what is the line? The question line. Example. So definitely they have framed in a manner that is equivalent to the important line that we need to address. What they have addressed the question, we want you examples. First of all, they want you with what? Examples. So because we have given with what in the answer, we are given examples here. So they want you examples, and then they want you with respect to the integrity of the client. So with respect to the integrity of the client, they want you examples of matters to be considered by the firm will consider. So are you getting this? Why I was saying the line above the answer is very, very important. Clear? If you are thorough with that line, na, definitely you will be able to identify the right answer, and you will be able to recollect the few of the point. If at all not 6 points, at least you will be able to give at least 3 or 4 points. And if it's a, again, if it's a 4 mark question, then out of these 6 points, or 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, out of these 7 points, even if you mention 4 points, 4 out of 4, or if not 4 out of 4, definitely 3 out of 4. But you have to mention the 4 points from these 7 points only, not something from your own mahal. Clear? So the question, are we clear? We have to see the examples that the firm will consider, the matters that the firm will consider with respect to the integrity of the client. So let's just not see the answer. I'll ask you only to provide me some of the points based on your opinion, what all points you can address, or what all matters you think you should address in as an example while addressing the integrity of the client. With regard to the integrity of the client, what points you will see? Yes, come up with certain points.
So, proper payment to key managerial person.
Proper payment to KMPs, definitely that is not going to show the integrity, because the entity is in essence run by the KMP. So they will ensure them that at least if not other employees, but they are getting the salary, or that is they are getting the remuneration.
Okay.
Nature of business.
Nature of the business, so I just like I told you, is it a sort of a business which is more of into cash business, which could lead to manipulation in the books of accounts, right? Or where certain entries will not be given by the client to us. So the nature of business is important. That could also hint us to the any sort of other act that also needs to be aware about certain sort of, suppose if it's more or less more into cash and it's a huge scale business and also leading to inter-country transactions, then that can hint us into PAMLA, prevention of money laundering. So all these points will also have to see. Yes, any other point?
द आउटगोइंग ऑडिटर, उससे बहुत सारी चीजें पता चल जाएंगी कि कैसा ही
Right.
है बिजनेस.
This point was expected from you all. Will be communicating what the previous auditor. Why was the previous auditor not doing the audit? Why has he come us? Why has he come with us for the audit? And why I have to check with the integrity? Right? He has come up with us, so we are checking whether we should accept the audit or not. So we can just simply communicate with the previous auditor as per Schedule 1, Part 1, Clause 8, written communication. We will check why if at all we should accept the audit or not. Is there any reason, any sort of reason we should not accept the audit? That was the objective, right? Schedule 1 Part 1 Clause 8, the objective was whether we should accept the audit or not, and if at all there is any certain reason why we should not accept the audit. So we should definitely communicate with the previous auditor. From there we will get to know a lot many things about the client's integrity and other sort of any sort of business or nature of business operation, nature of the client, their key managerial, their reputation in the market. So everything we will get to know. So let's just see the identity and business reputation. Identity and the business reputation. The identity and the business reputation of the clients, principal owners, KMPs, related parties, and TCWG. So you can just Google it out once. Certain, suppose that it's a big client. Suppose it's a Runwal industry here, Runwal infrastructure. There are lot many projects of Runwal, or suppose Lodha, or any sort of client. You can get to know a lot many points on the KMPs from the just googling out or just getting to speak to certain business person, spokesperson. You can just get to know a lot about KMPs, their directors, their related parties. So I'll just give you one example. Yesterday only, I had to do the management assessment of People's Bank. There is a bank in Sri Lanka, People's Bank. It's the second largest bank in Sri Lanka, People's Bank. So assessment is generally provided by the business person, the person who are doing, that is the person who are involved in the front end. So I'll give you a kind of a glimpse about my profile, that I have to assess the banks which our bank is providing finance. So suppose our bank, Citibank, is providing finance to all the public sector banks in India, Sri Lanka, or in Bangladesh, in all sort of countries. So in India, they have coverage of all the banks. All the banks are getting finance from Citibank as well. So whoever is our client, we have to assess those client. We have to assess those client and prepare a report accordingly, whether there is at all the facility amount should increase or decrease, or whether we should grant further amount to them or not, right? So that is what has to be assessed. And People's Bank is one of the client of us in Sri Lanka, not because it's a client, because Sri Lanka government is our client. Sri Lanka government, we are investing a lot money in the treasury securities of the Sri Lanka. And if you are aware about the position of Sri Lanka, it is equivalent to a situation, kind of, you can say equivalent to situation of Pakistan. So Pakistan, you must be aware about it, because you tend to be getting entertained from just learning about the facts of Pakistan. So inflation is that much, tomato price is going like skyrocketing, prices of tomato and everything. But the situation in Sri Lanka is not less than Pakistan. So there, the one, if you will see, dollar one was equivalent to LKR, Lankan rupees 380 has reached out to. Now it is stabilizing to 320, 330 level. Similarly, the inflation. Do you know what is our T bill rate, treasury bill rate in India? T bill rate. Treasury bill is the safest instrument that is issued by the government through RBI, through the federal bank of the country. That means in our case RBI. Similarly, say in government of Sri Lanka will be issuing treasury bills through Central Bank of Sri Lanka. That is their RBI. So in our India it's 6.75%. In Sri Lanka it is 32% is the rate of interest in the T bills of the government of Sri Lanka. That shows that no one is willing to invest in the government of Sri Lanka. No one is willing to give the money to government of Sri Lanka because they have defaulted recently in January, Feb, March last year. They have defaulted on the foreign currency payment. Government has defaulted. Government. I'm talking about the government. Their rating is downgraded to 7 minus. So in our bank we have the rating. We have also have to do the risk rating. So what is the risk rating? So just like you might be aware about the A plus, triple A, triple A, A2. Similarly, the Sri Lanka's rating has downgraded to the least possible rating right now, and the same goes with the Bangladesh. As Bangladesh, Moody's rating has been downgraded from Baa3 to Ba1 recently. Last three days back the news was there. So that is the case. You can also identify, if suppose I was telling you what I had to do, management assessment of the People's Bank, because for Sri Lanka government we do what, we assess all the public sector bank, and where there we get to know the economy information, banking information, and we get to assess the government position. If at all you want to assess government of India, so you'll get to assess the economy. You will be assessing all the banks of the government, and specifically public sector banks, not the private bank like Axis Bank, HDFC or ICICI, but the public sector bank, IOB, BOB, getting the PNB. So that, for that matter, people bank assessment had to be done, and I was just googling about management assessment. So there I got to know that government of Sri Lanka had pointed out the point on the appointment of MD of the government of Sri Lanka, MD of the People's Bank. So they had pointed that this person should not be appointed as MD, because he has only prior 8 years relevance in the treasury department only, and not as a overall all the sectors of the banking. So he had the prior 8 years experience in the treasury department, but anyway he was appointed, and that point was highlighted by me in the report. So that is what you can also get to know about the clients, principal owners, key management, related parties, TCWG. So any sort of news you are aware about, any sort of point that you come to know. Clear? The first point, identity and business reputation of the client, principal owners, management, directors, any sort of KMPs. Similarly, then the information concerning the attitude of the client's principal owners. So what is their attitude? How is their attitude? So attitude here is means what? You need to assess whether they are conservative or whether they are aggressive. So if they are aggressive, suppose, how can you assess? Just by if I give you an example, which is more conservative way of accounting estimate, SLM method of depreciation or WDV, which is more aggressive, and which one other way around, which is more conservative? What do you think? Just by assessing, just by seeing which accounting estimate, which accounting policies are they following, we can assess the aggressiveness or conservativeness of the management, or attitude of the management, how much conservative or how much aggressive they are. What do you think, which is more conservative and which is more aggressive?
SLM is more aggressive.
SLM is more aggressive. Why so?
In
So because
WDV,
in fixed amount is been deducted irrespective of the WDV amount.
So here the amount is fixed only. In WDV also the amount is fixed.
No, sir, but depreciation is calculated on the WDV value, now, which is written down, and in SLM method, irrespective of the amount of the asset which has been carried down, the
So but how does
depreciation
it
amount has
reflect
been
your
fixed.
aggressiveness? Pawan is saying WDV. How? Pawan.
Because higher depreciation charge in initial year.
Higher depreciation in initial years. That means what? You are assuming that this asset we will be using more in earlier years as compared to SLM method of depreciation, where you are assuming that we'll be using this asset equivalently in every year. So higher usage in initial year shows your what? Higher revenues during the year. So revenue expenditure matching concept. That means you will be using much asset much more in the initial year, thereby generating much more revenue as compared to last years. That means revenue you are expecting more, the usage you are expecting more. In essence, you are assuming what? Aggressive. In essence, you are assuming aggressive method of accounting estimate. Clear? So that is what you have to assess: the attitude of the client's principal owner, the attitude of the management, attitude of the TCWG. So first was identity and reputation. Second is attitude. Third one is the nature of the client's operation, including its business practice. So just now the first point you told someone, Kurpali I believe, was told has told what? nature of the client's business, nature of its operation, whether is it cash business, whether it's more or less, suppose they are involved into option trading or any sort of future involved, stock market trading. That means what, they are more or less 100% into non-cash business only. That means 100% of the business will be done through banking channels, because stock
Banking
market
channels.
has to be done through banks, right? Similarly, then we have two indications that the client might be involved in money laundering or other sort of criminal activity. So that I related it with what, cash business, right? Krupali, are you saying something?
No, sir.
Yeah.
Microphone.
Then the reason for the proposed appointment of the firm and non-reappointment of the previous firm, the point that Dhanlakshmi pointed out, right? Schedule 1 part 1 clause, you can just simply communicate with the previous auditor. Why were they not getting reappointed as an audit firm? Why are we being approached? Why are we being approached to be their new auditor? And then whether the client is aggressively concerned with the maintaining the firm's fees as low as possible. That means what, the client is aggressively pushing us that no, you cannot charge us high fee. They are aggressively pushing us low fees. Whether the client is aggressively concerned with maintaining the firm's fee as low as possible. And lastly, indication of an appropriate limitation in the scope of work. This is also very important, that you can get to know from the, while communicating with the previous auditor, you can just simply ask them whether they were in any years or in any sort of their tenure as an auditor, were they ever being limited with the scope of work, whether there was any sort of limitation in the scope of work during any time in their tenure as an auditor. So you can simply relate this reappointment of the previous firm or proposed appointment of the firm and non-reappointment of the previous firm, schedule 1 part 1 clause and reasons you can seek to, and also the indications of the limitation of the scope of work from the previous auditor. So let's just try to learn all these points. Let's just see. So firstly, we will check identity and reputation of the client. Principal, owner, management will check with them the identity and reputation, and then while checking with the identity and reputation, we got to know that they are well reputed, and therefore they have a lot of attitude. What we say, a lot of attitude, they have a lot of any attitude. And why they have a lot of attitude is because of their nature of operation. Because of their nature of operation, that they feel that it is very non risky, but we knew that they are involved in money laundering, and therefore we checked with our previous auditor. We checked with the previous auditor, and there we got to know that their fees was very low. That is why they left the firm. That means they were imposing on the previous auditor to keep the fees low, and that is what the previous auditor denied. And secondly, they denied because of the limitation in the scope of work. There were also instances where the client put limitations on the scope of the work of the previous auditor, and that is why the previous auditor gave us two reasons for denying the audit. We approached to the previous auditor and they told us two reasons for the denial. That is, first reason was that they were asked to charge low fees, and secondly, there were many limitations in the scope of work. So thereby we will be able to retain all the points. Firstly, come again, let's just try to recollect again. Identity and reputation, identity and the reputation. By seeing that they are well reputed, we got to know that there is a lot of attitude in the client. Why? Because they think that their nature of operation is very well, but we knew that they are involved in money laundering sort of activities, criminal activities, and therefore we approached what, previous auditor of the firm. Previous auditor of the firm told us two reasons. What all two reasons? Limitation in the scope of work, that is why they didn't accept the next audit or continued with the client. And second reason for non-continuance with the client was with respect to charging of low fees. Are we clear? Each and all the points, every point. Question is there. This is, I believe, RTP question, can be asked anytime. Please be ready. Let's now come to human resources. So human resources, I have already told you that you should get enough leaves, at least 4 to 5 months leaves before your final examination, right? Similarly, after you have qualified, now you are doing job, then you should definitely get at least 8 to 10 months leave for your marriage, right? So all these points have to be seen in the human resource. Promotion, leaves, whether are you able to leave the office on time or not. So the promotion part, recruitment, evaluation, capabilities, competency, compensation, personal needs, career development, all each and every point needs to be added into human resources. So here the what all points the firm will consider, the matters the firm will consider with respect to capability, competence, time and resources. So just now we have saw integrity. We have saw integrity. What all examples that the firm needs to address with regard to integrity, right? Examples with regard to integrity. Now we will be seeing with regard to competency. So again, I'll ask you what all points you will see, whether are we able to competently perform the audit or not. Are we competent enough or not? What all points you will see? Yes,
Do we have required knowledge about the business of the client?
correct. So required knowledge not just about the business of the client, but also about the technical standards. You should be aware about all the accounting standard, Indian accounting standard, laws, company laws, regulation, legal and all the regulatory requirements that is required to for you to perform the audit, right? Or and
If
Sir,
any
training.
disqualification is subtracted.
so that is more or less dealing with the acceptance and continuance in the ethical requirement. Just log here it will be covered more or less compliance with all the ethical requirements. Are we independent enough? Are we ethically able to do the audit or not, or are we disqualified? With respect to the competency,
Do we
Sir,
have required
training.
number of staff to perform the audit?
come again.
Do we have required number of staff, like human resources, to perform the audit?
Required number of staff, correct. Number, quantity, right? So number of staff, whether we have enough staff or not to perform the audit in a timely manner. Not just to perform the audit, but to perform the audit in a timely manner within time. Yes, Arnab, you were saying
Sir, training, the frequency of training and all
whether
updation.
whether they are trained, well trained. So suppose you only na you are suppose hiring an employee under you. What all points you will see, whether he has the knowledge, technical, all the technical standard knowledge, whether he has experience. So our staff should be experienced also, right? And not just experience, you will see whether they are having relevant experience or not. So suppose I am having a relevant experience in auditing. I am relevant experience in auditing in the big four. And now suppose if I am jumping into another firm, another big four firm, so they will consider the relevant experience. But suppose I am having an industry experience and now I want to shift to big four, then they generally discount that number of years of experience. So suppose I am having 2 years of experience in big four and again 2 years of experience in any industry, suppose. So in if I am going to big four for auditing application as a job, then they will consider entire 2 years as a relevant years of experience, but they might consider only 1 year as a year of experience. So relevant experience also then you need to consider. And what you are saying is training, whether the staffs are well trained, well experienced, well knowledged, right? So all these points will have to be come out with the competency and capability. So in considering whether the firm is capable, whether the firm is competent, whether the firm will be able to give their enough time and their resources to undertake a new engagement from a new or existing client, the firm will review the specific requirement of the engagement and existing partner and staff profile at all the relevant levels. So matters again the question not yet asked in anywhere, not even RTP, MTP, nothing specified, nowhere asked, but they can simply ask what all matters the firm need to consider, what all matters the firm will consider while seeing the capability, competency, time, and resources that the firm can provide while accepting their new client, while accepting or to undertake the new engagement from a new or existing client. What all matters the firm will consider, the what all matters the firm will consider. And I told you, whenever they ask the question on the firm wide, that is the firm wide question, the answer will be from SQC1. Clear? So let's just see the knowledge of the relevant industry as well as the subject matter, experience with relevant regulatory and reporting requirement, how much experience you have. Similarly, sufficient number of personnel, number of staff. Then experts are available or not. Not all the information we can be expert into, right? We cannot be expert in all the fields, so we might be we might be requiring experts. So whether the all sort of experts are available with us or not, and then the individuals meeting the criteria and eligibility requirement to perform engagement equality quality control review are available or not. So that is what your EQCR, engagement quality control review, is available or not. That is a concept that we'll study later in SQC1 also, and even in SA220. And lastly, the firm would be able to complete the engagement in a timely manner, in a deadline, in a timely manner, right? So here we are already studying what time and resources, So that is why here we'll be reporting in a timely and deadline, reporting timely manner, reporting in a timely manner. Now here again there could be a differentiate. We have to create a differentiate between these 2 points. If they ask you firm की क्या capability है, if they ask you the capability competency of the firm, mark this important firm. This is the differentiating point. And just below this, if they ask you capability and competency of the staff, then you'll answer these points. So what is my role? My role is to point out these differences only, where you might not be aware while plain reading, or if suppose you are going through any sort of video, but this is what is differentiating on the matters that the ICI can ask you. If they ask you on the staff competency, then you will answer these points. And this they ask you competency and the capability, time and resources of the firm, then you will have to answer the above points. So staff, in the staff we'll see again what how many practical years of experience do the staff have. Similarly, professional standards and legal and regulatory requirement, does the staff has the knowledge of these legal and regulatory requirements or not, and the technical knowledge with respect to all the relevant information technology standards on auditing, accounting standard, IT information technology, that is suppose example Excel and all the sort of information technology tools. Then knowledge of the relevant industry knowledge. Above was number of years of experience, here is relevant experience, and then ability to apply your professional judgment and understanding of the quality control policies and procedures. So here we are assessing whether the firm का कितना experience है, firm का क्या knowledge level है, firm wide, and here staff wide. I hope it's clear. They can ask you new question is probably more chances, having more chances to be asked in the exam from SQC1, because I'll tell you what, this question and this question is generally asked. These two questions is generally asked from SQC1. So now they've also started asking new questions, just like they asked in November 2022. I told you what, this question: before withdrawal, what all issues needs to be addressed by the auditor, by the firm, what all points you will address before withdrawal. So they had earlier also given 4 points on this, and they asked one simply plain new question from these 4 points. So each and every point where we think that yes, a question can be asked, I have included here. So you should definitely mark the difference and also try to comprehensively go through the same. Till now you won't be finding any sort of difficulty. Just remember, whatever time we are giving here, you also needs to give the same amount of time while revising. Again, Garima, why are you late? Try not to create any sort of backlog. That is what I would say. Try not to create any sort of backlog. Try to finish it off with our class. Just after the class, try to revise it again and try to finish it off with the class itself. Try not to create any sort of backlog or any sort of backup that you might need to see later. In fact, I'll tell you not to wake up at 7 or 6:45 or 6:50. I'll tell you to wake up at 6 and at least try to revise half an hour before you start with the class. At least give half an hour. Last time also I told you, just try this and you will feel the level of confidence, the boost in the confidence level. You will feel it. Now let's come to next point, engagement performance. This is our another point point number E. So human resources, just now we saw what? Promotion, career development, leave, staff promotion, staff development, all points with respect to human resources, recruitment, selection. Then acceptance and continuance, already we saw 2-3 questions under this acceptance and continuance, right? Acceptance and continuance, we saw 3 points: integrity, competency, ethical requirements. Integrity, we saw a separate question. In the competency and capability, we saw 2 questions, one with respect to the firm, another with respect to the staff. And then the compliance with ethical requirement, there is nothing means specified separately in the bare standard, just a paragraph is mentioned in the ethical requirement, but that is very basic and general, so I have not included here. Then we also saw human resources, and now we'll be seeing engagement performance. So again, not yet tested. What does it say? Through our policies and procedure, we should seek to establish consistency in the quality of our performance, in the quality of our auditing services, in the quality of our review services, in the quality of any other sort of related service that we provide. We should try to seek consistency in the quality. Consistency in the quality, this is often accomplished through written or electronic manuals. So often we will include what? We'll include policies and procedure with respect to consistency in the quality in our written form, in our written documents, or in electronic manual, in PDFs, or in software tools, or in other forms of standardized documentation, or industry and subject matter specific guidance material. For example, guidance note on tax audit is a guidance material provided by the institute, well documented, guiding you to do the tax audit engagement. Similarly, what all matters you need to address? So matters that we need to address with respect to whether the policies and procedure include all these things, include the quality consistency, include the points which deals with the consistency in the quality of engagement performances. Consistency in the quality, consistency in the quality. So these are the keywords: consistency in the quality, consistency in the quality of the engagement performance. What all matters you will address, what all matters you will address in your policy drafted, in your documents that you will draft as a policy and procedure. What all points you will address in your policies and procedure. So we'll address how engagement teams are briefed to obtain the understanding of the objective of their work. How are they made aware about that? Yes, you all have to do all this work. So are we making proper audit plan, or in front of all the audit plans, in front of each and every task, whether there is a person responsible for completing the task, whether he is signing the task after completion, whether he is signing just beside his name or not. The responsible person should sign so that he is made responsible, accountable for the work that he has done, right? So how engagement teams are briefed to obtain an understanding, processes for complying with applicable engagement standard. How will you comply with all the sort of standards? Processes of engagement supervision, staff training and coaching, method of reviewing work performed, and how are you all going to appropriately document the same. And how are you going to keep all these policies and procedure that you are going to make for, or that you are going to standardize in a documented format, how are you going to keep it current, keep it updated? Yes, so Sagar, this is your homework to make us all learn these 6 points in the class tomorrow. Okay?
Okay, sir.
Now let's come to the next sort of question which we have already done. Just go through the reading once. Matters that needs to address, or issues that needs to address before withdrawing. What all points you will see? So we'll discuss with the appropriate level of the client, management and TCWG. Generally you will find this point in all sort of standards. Whenever we are withdrawing, we'll communicate with the management that we are withdrawing because of this matters. We'll communicate the reason to the TCWG, and then we'll also have to communicate with the reason with the regulatory department, regulatory authority. Clear? So management, TCWG and regulatory body, these 3 parties have to be communicated about the withdrawal. Are we clear? So first point is with respect to discussion with them, discussion with the management, discussion with the TCWG regarding the appropriateness of the action that the firm might take place, regarding the appropriateness of the action that we might withdraw from the engagement or from the client relationship as a whole. Then if the firm determines that yes, it is appropriate, after all the discussion that we have now determined that yes, we are going to withdraw from the engagement or withdraw from the client relationship, then we'll discuss with the appropriate level of the client's management TCWG withdrawal from the engagement and give the reason for the withdrawal. So firstly we discuss whether we should take the action or not, and secondly if they are not mitigating that action, then we'll tell them they are no, okay fine, we'll withdraw from the engagement along with the reasons you have to provide. You might be aware about section 140 subsection 2 that you have to provide the reasons within 30 days in form ADT2, within 30 days in form ADT2 to the company, to the ROC, and in the case of government company, you also have to provide the same to the C and AG. Thirdly, if you do not provide this reason for withdrawal, then you are penalized under section 140 subsection 3, highest penalty being 25,000. So reasons for the withdrawal also you have to give. Second point, and thirdly, consider whether there is any sort of professional responsibility imposed on you or any sort of responsibility imposed by you on law, imposed by law or regulatory requirement to report the withdrawal together with the reasons for the withdrawal. And lastly, documenting significant issue consultations conclusions. So this was asked in November 2022, last to last attempt. Exam question, first question, compulsory question. So generally you will find from SQC 1, they'll give you question in the compulsory section only. Question you cannot avoid. That is why SQC 1 again becomes very, very IMP. Now this question also they have asked in RTP or MTP somewhere. I don't remember, but the question again, the last line of the question was when the review work is performed by less experienced team member and you are the experienced person in the firm, you are the most experienced or the experienced person in the CA firm, what all is your responsibility to review the work which is reviewed by less experienced person? Are you getting this? You are reviewing a work but you are very less experienced, so the person who is more experienced than you, then what is the responsibility which is imposed on the more experienced person? So review responsibilities are determined on the basis that more experienced engagement team members, including the engagement partner. Engagement partner also, it could be engagement partner or it could be sort of manager or director. We don't know. But review work performed by less experienced team members. Reviewers considers whether the work has been performed in accordance with professional standard and law and legal and regulatory requirement. Very, very important question again. This has been asked in exam, I believe. You have to consider what any sort of professional standard requirement that you need to be adhering to, any sort of legal LR requirement, legal and regulatory requirement, then whether you have raised all the significant matters that you encountered during the audit. So any sort of doubt, any sort of fear during the audit, you have raised it to the management, you have raised it to the TCWG. So all the significant matters have been raised for further consideration or not. These all points reviewer has to consider. Reviewer will check whether we have performed the audit or we have performed the engagement in accordance with professional standard and LR requirement. Secondly, we will check whether properly all the matter, significant matter have been raised or not. Thirdly, we will see whether the consultations have been taken by us or not, and all these consultation, the conclusion based on the consultations that we had taken, whether those conclusion has been documented or not. So suppose we were confused in a point where we were not sure whether we should deal with this point as this or that, then we consulted it with the expert, and the conclusion that we derived after consultation either with the expert or with the management or with the TCWG, whoever you consult with, that has to be documented, and check whether you have documented that consultation or not. And then there is a need to revise the NT of the work performed. That means whatever work we have performed till now, whether there is any sort of need that we need to revise the NTE. Then whatever work we have performed, suppose we have an Excel file, and whatever form we have whatever work we have performed, suppose this is the conclusion, this is the total, and based on this total we formed a conclusion. So that is what they say, that this conclusion and this working and this conclusion both should tally. The conclusion that you derive and the working therefore against which you derive the conclusion both should tally, and the conclusion should be documented. The workings conclusion should be documented as well. The work performed supports the conclusions reached and is appropriately documented. then you have obtained all the sufficient appropriate audit evidences, and objective is achieved. Objective has been achieved or not. So again, I'll try to comply with all the professional standard legal requirement. Then I suppose just to get this answer through a form of story, suppose I was going through all sort of legal and regulatory requirement, all sort of professional standard that need to be complied in the firm. Then I saw a major departure from certain law and regulation. That means a significant matter. I encountered a significant matter. So whether I have raised it for further consideration or not, then I raised it for further consideration. So even they didn't knew this, so I had to take someone else consultation. So whether I have taken consultation from someone else, and the conclusion that I have derived, whether the same is documented or not, that is the third point. So again let's quickly recap. Professional standard LR requirement, I was checking there. I got to know that yes, there is a significant matter which needs to be addressed, which needs to be brought into the attention of the management TCWG for further consideration. So I brought into the attention of TCWG management for further consideration. So now they were also not aware about this. So I had to take proper appropriate consultation with other parties, and I have to also document the conclusions that I have derived from that consultation. Then whether I need to revise the NTE of the work that I performed, and the work that I have performed and the conclusion that I derived from that work performed, both should tally, and the working should be properly documented also. The working should be properly documented, and whether I have obtained all the sufficient appropriate audit evidence or not, and the objective of the engagement procedures achieved or not. Are we clear? Yes or no till now?
First question clear, not clear. What is the question of this? Means I understand the process and this memory, but what is the question that can be asked? Can you come again, sir?
Review responsibility that is imposed on the engagement partner or the more experienced person in your engagement team. It could be engagement partner or it could be anyone else. But what are the review responsibilities which are imposed on you? In same question in SA 220, what they ask, if suppose you had done the entire audit, and now before signing the audit, suppose you met with an accident or you died or any sort of event happened, because of which you will not be able to sign the audit. In that case, me as a different, as a separate engagement partner, or as a another engagement partner within the firm, will have to perform the audit, will have to sign the audit report, right? Anyone has to sign the engagement audit or the engagement within the firm. Any engagement partner has to sign. So I will be doing it, but only and only after reviewing the same. So review responsibility is being imposed here on the engagement partner or any person who is more experienced than the person who has done the work, or reviewer who is less experienced. So more experienced person has to review, including the engagement partner. So what all matters you will review? You will see these all points, whether प्रोफेशनल स्टैंडर्ड complied with or not, लॉ की रिक्वायरमेंट पूरी हुई कि नहीं, देन सारे जो इंपॉर्टेंट तुमको क्वेश्चन आ रहे थे माइंड में, whether you have reached out to the management DCWG for further consideration, then this appropriate consultation तुमने लिया, and क्या वो consultation जो तुमने लिया from the expert or from any sort of third party, whether you have documented the same or not, right? Then the consultation has been documented. Similarly, the conclusions should also be documented, including the workings which you have derived, for which you have used for deriving the conclusion. Correct? Then work performed, evidence obtained जो तुमने किया वो sufficient appropriate audit evidence होना चाहिए, and lastly objective should be achieved. Objective should be achieved. Now if at all there is a difference of opinion, then report should not be issued until the matter is resolved. That is very simple. If there is a difference of opinion, then until and unless the matter is resolved, please do not issue the audit report. And generally the difference will arise with whom? Difference will arise between the engagement partner and between the engagement quality control reviewer. So who is EQCRR? EQCRR. Who is EQCRR? Engagement quality control reviewer. So generally big firms, big four audits, or in top 10, top 20 firms, or even in many firms, they have EQCRR's department or separate persons who are appointed as EQCRR. What are their responsibility? Their responsibility is to check and go through whether the audit is performed in all the quality control standards or not. So engagement quality control reviewers will go and pick up any audit from one auditor or from one engagement partner, per engagement partner one audit they will pick up, and they will go through whether the documentation was done in accordance with SA 230, whether the quality control standard is done properly adhered to in accordance with SQC 1, whether any sort of policies and procedure that needs to be adhered to with respect to independence, integrity, for Falna Dikna with respect to SA 220 has been complied with or not. So all these points will be checked by EQCRR, and then only you can sign the audit report. In the case of listed entities in particularly, then only you can sign the audit report.
Sir, these reviewers are formed and managed within the firm,
Within
na?
the firm, they are employee of the firm, but they are a different department. They are not involved in the auditing.
ओके सर, इनका कोई अलग से बोर्ड नहीं रहता ना जो इनको ओवरवॉच करेगा?
Audit committee of the firm, or any sort of MD CEO equivalent, or any sort of governing board, if at all there is a governing board in the firm. In big firm generally you will find a governing board. In
ओके
small
सर.
firm, your partners, engagement or managing directors or managing partners of the firm, they only manage. Now before November 2022, this was asked in May 22 exam. In the case of audit of financial statement of listed entity. So they in the question simply gave A Limited is a listed entity which is listed in National Stock Exchange of India. So what are the experts that need to be considered by CAR while performing engagement quality control review for the audit of financial statement of a listed entity? For the audit of financial statement of a listed entity, what all points you need to consider? So we'll just try to focus on this answer. Very important. These two exam, for exam purpose, these two are very important. One is this, and the second one is this. Then we'll take a break. But let's just quickly complete this May 22 question. It says what EQCR for audit of FS of listed entities will consider whether evaluation of the firm's independence in relation to the specific engagement. That is with what? Whether the firm is independent or not of the client. Then the significant risk which is identified during the engagement in response to those risks. So here, in a sense, what we are going to do is EQCRR will, in essence, see all the standards on auditing has been complied with or not, or entire audit was done, entire audit, because here we are considering what? Audits of the listed entity. Audit. So here we will be checking all the standards on audit. All the standards on audits, I'll just give you a glimpse. Evaluation of the firm's independence in relation to specific engagement. So here SA 200 compliance, you will see independence, professional skepticism, due care, professional judgment, properly taken or not. Then significant risk identified during the engagement and response to those risks. So we identify inherent risk in SA 315 and identified risk are responded in SA 330. Are responded in SA 330. Once we go through all the standard, then you will be able to quickly mug up this answer, because it is more or less relating to all the standards on auditing that we follow. So SA 200 and then SA 315, 300, 330. Then judgments made with respect to, particularly with respect to materiality and significant risk. So SA 320 materiality. Particularly there is the first question with respect to judgment that you will make with respect to materiality. And whether appropriate consultations has taken place on matters involving difference of opinion, whether you have taken the consultation with the expert or not. So consultation with the expert, conclusions arising from this consultation, conclusions with the expert, consultation with expert, you can simply say what? SA 620 or SA 500, management expert. And then significance of disposition of corrected uncorrected misstatement, this is what? SA 450. If at all you find certain misstatement in your financial statement, you will first tell management TCWG to rectify that misstatement. If management is not rectifying that misstatement, they will say us what? That those are not material, those are immaterial. So then we can either obtain a written confirmation from the management that the mistakes that they are pointing out is immaterial according to them, or we can simply assess whether the misstatement is material or not. And if it is material but the management is telling us that it is immaterial, then we will see accordingly in our opinion para, modification or qualification. Clear? Then the matters need to be management communicated. That is what? SA 260. And then whether working papers, that is again here what? 230. Work performed, working papers and the conclusions that you derive, both should match. I told you just about that also. The point was same, that working papers and the conclusion that you derive to reach into the conclusion should tally, should support the conclusions that you are reaching. And the appropriateness of the report issued, this is what? SA 700. So more or less each and every standard is covered in our each and every standard series. So ऐसे 200 series was covered in first point. ऐसे 200 से क्या याद आना चाहिए? ऐसे 200 from we should able to recall from ऐसे 200 independence requirement, professional skepticism, due care, all this has to be from SA 200. Then after 200 we arrive at 300 series. So 300 series we saw what? SA 315 and 330. So 315 we identify the risk, and whatever risk we have identified will respond or mitigate those risks by responding it in SA 330. So 315, 330. Similarly 320 we had materiality. SA 320 materiality, judgments that you will take about the materiality. Then in the 400 series we had what? SA 450, identification of a misstatement that needs to be reported to management or TCWG. Then after reporting it to ICG or TCWG, then we saw what? SA 400 series के बाद कौन सी series है? SA 500, right? Management expert conclusion, consultations that you need to arrive at, and whether the consultation has been properly documented or not. Then after SA 500, SA 600 series, that means with respect to SA 620, consultation again same point, expert. Then SA 700, issuance of the audit report. Are we clear? So quickly take a break. We'll have then complete this SQC 1. We are left with 2-3 questions. Let's just take a break. We'll meet at 8:40.
Sir, I have one question here.
Yeah.
Last. Sir, can you go back to that last section?
Yes.
Sir, this is like the engagement quality control review. This is done by auditor, or I means the EQCR team. Means there is the two, like auditor is there, and for supervising that, if it is less experience, there is some team, like. So for that, so who will going to do this? This last question. This is done by EQCR team, or this is done by auditor?
You are asking about this. Just now we study audit of financial statement of
Yes.
listed. This will be done by EQCRR. What all points they will review,
That is
not by
fine.
the engagement partner, not within the engagement team. No one else will review. Here the review will be
Yes,
done by
yes.
the independent department, that is EQCRR. So what is
Yeah,
your
that
question?
team will team will see. But there one question is, if there is a difference between their opinion, like the auditor is try to qualify the report, but after reviewing all the things, EQCR team just clean the report. So what will be there in that case?
So that
Means,
has to be addressed separately in your audit report. So that is why I told you what, in the case of audit of financial statement of listed entities, before the audit report date or before you give your opinion, you have to get yourself EQCR, get your audit EQCRR. So engagement quality control reviewer will review your performance of the audit, and then only you can issue the audit report. So in case there is any sort of difference of opinion, then you will simply mention that EQCRR is of this opinion, but I am of this opinion because of this reason specified in basis for opinion para. So my opinion is this, but that is the opinion of EQCRR. Have to deal with the difference in opinion, and the difference in opinion, just now we see what the report should not be issued until the matter is resolved. If at all there is a difference between the engagement partner or the engagement quality control reviewer, we have to establish what all policies and procedure will be within the firm. If at all there is a difference, how are we gonna get aligned?
okay, sir, clear now.
Clear?
Thank you. Yes.
So let's meet at 8:45. Okay, 5 minutes more. So everyone's back. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So now we will be checking inspection of completed engagement. Inspection of completed engagement. Above we saw what it was not completed. The engagement was not yet completed. The report was not issued. The opinion was not given. Audit report date was not put. Now we have done with audit reporting and everything. The engagement is done, completed. Not only the audit engagement, but any sort of engagement that the firm encounters, and then their inspection has to be done, just like peer review, quality review. Within our sort of, you can say, internal review has to be done. Now internal review, if they say, so just like in if you remember, in quality review there was a cyclical period mentioned. So suppose if you are if total number of partners in your firm is more than equal to 20 partners, more than equal to 20 partners, then how many years quality review should be done? 3
Uh,
years, right? Similarly, if number of partners is less than 10, how many in how many years?
5 years.
5 years.
I
Similarly, here also they say that inspection should be done, and out of, suppose there are total of us 5 partners: Pooja, me, Nikita, Nupur, and Avija. So we are 5 partners. Therefore, in the internal inspection, at least 5 audits should be picked up, and one audit should be minimum one audit should be there from each engagement partner. Each engagement partner, whoever, we all have done the audits, so audits from all of us should be picked up. At least one audit from all of us should be picked up. Cyclical, maximum in all 3 years, or total cycle maximum should be not more than 3 years. So in all that, in after every 3 years, there should be done what? Again an inspection of the completed engagement. So the inspection of the selection of the completed engagement is ordinarily performed on a cyclical basis. The cycle is no more than 3 years. However, they say what engagement selected for inspection include at least one engagement for each engagement partner over an inspection cycle. So this can be asked to you in MCQ as well. So please be aware about this. They're not yet been asked. So whenever I tell you something is important, then there's definitely it can be framed into a question. That is I'm telling you. So this can again be easily be framed to you in a sort of question, that at least one engagement for each engagement partner over an inspection cycle should be selected for your inspection. Everyone clear? So this is the least, that is one per engagement partner. This is the least. We can of course select more than this, right? Can we select more than this? Yes, definitely. How do we use to select the total number of engagements for our purpose in peer review? How many number of assurance engagement we should pick up for the purpose of peer review in a firm? How many number of engagements or assurance engagement we should pick up? How do we use to determine? Do you remember? Based on
SQC prevailing in the scope, nature of audit procedure adapted, number of engaging partner engaged in an assignment,
correct
uh, number of location branches of
number of
firm.
location branches, right? So all these points, whatever he's saying, Suneshwaran, again these all points will come here also. Like how many number of engagement you should pick up for your inspection, it will again depend on number of location branches you have as a firm. How many number of location branches, how many number of partners do you are, and then whether the quality control standard is properly implemented or not. That is what there also we used to see. So again, the size of the firm, number and geographical location of offices, results of previous monitoring procedures. Do you remember, based on this, in the quality review, how many maximum number of engagement can we select for quality review? Maximum number of engagement, and that
3 is
So audible नहीं है.
Audio.
yeah, I was asking if can we select more than 3 audit engagements for quality review?
no, sir. I think.
No.
Yes, sir.
Yes. No. Yes. No. Yes. When?
In others finding has been made in the previous quality review.
So there was an adverse opinion or adverse findings which was found in previous quality review performed. So whenever there was a adverse finding which was found in the previous quality review that was performed, then you can obviously in this quality review session can select more than 3 you engage audit engagements. Do you remember or not? Everyone? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
yes.
Right? So similarly here also they say that the results of the previous monitoring procedure, if at all there was an adverse result in the previous monitoring procedure, so this time you might select 2 or even 3 per engagement partner. correct? And then the degree of authority both personal offices have. That means example they have given is, now whether the head office has the authority to perform the inspection of the branches, or branches on their own have the authority to perform their inspection. So that will again then depend. So if the branches have the authority, or if the head office has the authority, so that can also determine the number of audit engagements, the manner in which the inspection cycle is organized, including the timing of selection, depends on many factors, including the following. And lastly, the risk associated with the firm's client and specific engagement. How much is the risky? Who will inspect here? Generally, engagement partner will inspect, or any sort of other senior partner, but who is not directly involved in that audit engagement, who was not directly involved in the audit engagement. This is not what we are seeing. EQCRR. EQCRR हो गया ऊपर. EQCRR provision mandatory applicable, done away with. Now the inspection will be done within the firm. Inspection of the completed engagement, but by the, this one more point is there, the nature and complexity of the firm's practice and organization. How much complex the firm is and how much they are into the practicing clients. So generally this inspection is done of the completed engagements by other partners who are not directly involved in the firm. So the firm as a whole has to take up the initiative. Now this you might be already aware about. Do you know how, for how many years are we supposed to keep with us the documentations, audit documentations? For how many years are we supposed to keep with us the audit documentations we cannot dispose of? Do you remember?
So 7 years.
Yeah, 7 years from the date of financial statement, or do you think from the date of audit report?
Audit report.
The date of audit report.
Right? So again, they can manipulate in this sort of way also. They can give you both options, two options: 7 years from the date of financial statement, or 7 years from the date of auditor's report. You will have to select what? 7 years from the date of auditor's report. And more precisely, specifically, if there is a consolidation audit also, that is consolidated financial statement का भी audit हो रहा है, then group auditor's report, audit report of the group वहाँ की डेट से अपन को we have to see what? 7 years from the date of group auditor's report. If at all there is also an audit of group financial statement or consolidated financial statement. Clear? However, there is one ISQC1. So generally SQC1 is the adopted form of international SQC1. International Standard on Quality Control 1. Our SQC1 is the adopted form of ISQC1, and therefore I have not included specific provision with respect to ISQC1 wherever they have stated. However, if at all there was any difference, I have mentioned it the same. Like here, there was a difference. Here it's what, 5 years. In ISQC1, the retention period is 5 years, not 7 years. So just mark this as a difference. If at all required in an MCQ, they might ask, or whatever be the question. Just remember this: in ISQC, it's 5 years. In SQC1, it's a 7 years retention period. Clear? Now you can see MCQ prone points I have written specifically, alag se differentiately I have mentioned based on whatever points I have found from the bare standard. So first is at least annually you have to communicate the results of the monitoring. Do you remember this monitoring was one of the elements, is one of our elements in elements of quality control. Leadership, evaluation of the performance that you perform. Similarly, after that it was this also, monitoring, acceptance and continuance of client relationship, the results of the monitoring of its quality control system to engagement partners. Then at least annually the network communicates the overall scope, extent and results of the monitoring process. The network has to communicate now. The network forms. Entire network will communicate the overall scope, extent and results of the monitoring process to appropriate individuals within the network forms. So annually again, the firm also has to do, and the same has to be done by the network as well. Remember. And then familiarity threat is particularly relevant in the context of financial statement audit of listed entities. So for these audits, the engagement partner should be rotated after a predefined period, normally not more than 7 years. Very, very important. In the case of listed entity, I'm telling. So what they are saying is after a period of 7 years, they want you to rotate engagement partners within the firm. So in the case of rotation of alter provision that you might get confused with in company audit, what does the provision say? Section 139 subsection 2, that if you are a firm of auditors, then you can have a consecutive 5 years period for two tenures. That means what? Overall 10 years. Overall 10 years tenure you can have. But after 7 years, you have to change the engagement partner who is performing the audit of that listed entity after a period of 7 years. Are we clear with this? The concept. This was asked in July 2021 exam. This is the exam question, July 2021 exam question. Rotation of engagement partner to be done in 7 years period. Yes, are we clear? Then the engagement quality control reviewer. Bole to means definition. As I told you, wherever I find that definition is important or might come in exam, I'll simply communicate here EQCRR. Who is the engagement quality control reviewer? Who will be the EQCRR? So generally EQCRR is our partner only, or is any other person, and such other person should be a chartered accountant in our firm only, or a suitably qualified external person. You could also employ any other external person, or a team made up of such individuals with sufficient and appropriate experience and authority to objectively evaluate such persons की team, such individuals again here means what? Either a partner or a chartered accountant. उनकी team है, their team before the report is issued has to do what? EQCR, engagement quality control review, has to be done by the EQCRR, who is either a chartered accountant within our firm, or is our partner, or is any other external person, qualified external person, or a team made up of such individuals, such individuals. And the conclusion they reached in formulating the report, however, in the case the review is done by a team of individual, such team should be a headed by chartered accountant only. So if it is done by a team of individuals, then the head of that team should be a chartered accountant only. Are we getting this? EQCRR. So again, a question can come for EQCRR, who can be engagement quality control reviewer. So there in MCQ, one of the MCQ of ICI, I think they have asked, not if this, then the definitely auditor expert, but I think they have asked this MCQ question, that they have specified one could be a qualified chartered accountant, other could be a CA finalist who has been employed within the firm for 5 years. So any sort of, or they can give you a expert or external architecture who is expert in this. So you will say what? No, he needs to be headed by a team of, if there is a team of individuals, then needs to be headed by chartered accountant only. Or else if there is only one individual, then he should either be my partner or a moti within our firm. Lastly, last point, complaints and allegation. Complaints and allegation. So Kapil, do you remember in your childhood when a neighboring auntie used to come and complain against you? Complaints and allegation. Any sort of complaints or allegation put against you. So what sort of environment, or what does your family used to do with you then? What is the exact procedure that used to be followed? Yeah. Did you get punishment, or before punishment what used to happen? Yes, Kapil. Directly will they punish you? Will they beat you? or before that will they ask you? Okay, you are in library. Okay, fine. So anyone else? What do you think?
So listen to him
Before
firstly.
yeah, have you seen the Tare Zameen Par movie? Tare Zameen Par movie. So Ishan Avasthi, the parents of other uh, person or that Motu guy, right? Their parents came and they started complaining about Ishan. So his father was all over him, beating him. But then mother was trying to listen him, right? His mother was trying to listen him. He investigate what actually happened, right? So that is what again here also has to be done. So if at all there is a complaint or allegation against our firm. So what is the exact process? So again it has to be investigated, right? So investigation has to happen within the firm. So who will do the investigation? What do you think? Who should do the investigation? Should the mother do the investigation or father? Who should do the investigation?
Father should do the investigation.
Because mother could be
Be-
biased, right? Mother could be biased, right?
Yes.
So definitely here also the same concept apply. The engagement partner who is involved in that audit against which the complaint is received, that should not be involved in the investigation. Instead, some other engagement partner who is not involved in the audit of the complaint audit, and for that matter, the auditing partner or engagement partner other than who is involved in the audit should be engaged for the purpose of investigation, right? And similarly, it should be an engagement partner or a position of that seniority also. So let's just see, the firm has to establish a policy or procedure so that it deals appropriately with any sort of complaints or allegation that may arise, that we have failed to comply with any sort of professional standard, or that we have failed to comply with any sort of legal or regulatory requirement, or any sort of allegations of non-compliance with the firm's standard on quality control. Similarly, complaints and allegations which do not include those that are clearly frivolous. That means what? Serious complaints only we are talking about. Serious complaint, not chindi pundi complaints. We are not talking about immaterial complaints. We are talking about material serious complaints that will be originating from within or outside India. Doesn't matter, it is originating within the firm. That is, your own brother is complaining, or it is coming outside the firm. That is, it is coming outside the family from another neighboring auntie, and received by engagement team member or other firm personnel. As part of this process, the firm establishes clearly defined channels. That means what? The firm should establish a policy and procedure which clearly defines what the channel will be, how will this complaint be processed, allegations, how will be it be investigated, checked, which channel it will pass through, which way it is going to be processed, for the firm's personnel to raise any sort of concerns, and also for the other persons within the firm. There should be a channel by which they can raise the complaints within the firm. It should also be a way, or it should like in the listed company we find what whistleblower mechanism. That means if any sort of non-compliance that you become aware about, then you can simply blow the whistle. You can simply make the entire organization aware about this non-compliance without disclosing your identity. That is what is your whistleblower mechanism is, right? That is headed by audit committee or vigil mechanism. Vigil mechanism is another committee, vigil mechanism committee, headed by audit committee only. So there also that can happen, that there is a channel by which you can complain if any sort of non-compliance you come across. Similarly, the firm will investigate now the complaints and allegation in accordance with established policy and procedure. Whatever is given in the policy and procedure, the investigation will happen in accordance with that, and investigation will be supervised by a partner, by a father, with sufficient and appropriate experience and authority within the firm, but who is not otherwise involved in the engagement, who is not otherwise involved, who is not biased, who is not otherwise involved in the engagement, and includes involving legal counsel as necessary. You can also involve some other legal counsel, be it internal legal counsel or your external legal counsel, for the purpose of this investigation. Small firms may not have that much capacity, legal counsel or other external parties, or within their firm any sort of engagement partner who is not directly or indirectly involved with that audit. Therefore, in that case, in the case of small firms, they can involve outside third parties to get themselves investigated. So small firms and sole proprietors, specifically sole practitioner who is only having what, one partner, then they may use the service of a suitably qualified external person or another firm to carry out the investigation. Where the results of investigations indicate any sort of deficiency, So now if at all there is a deficiency, then definitely someone's gonna get. Have you seen that Russell Peters show? Someone's gonna get hurt real bad. Anyone? So where the results of the investigation, any sort of deficiency is being indicated in the design or operation of the firm's quality control policy and procedure, or any sort of non-compliance has been detected by an individual or individuals, the firm will take then the appropriate action. That means what? Now the Kapil is gonna get hurt real bad. So you should see that Russell Peters' Indian Parents stand-up comedy 10-12 years back. Complaints and allegations. So we are done with what? SQC1. This is a question which is asked in RTP or MTP, I don't remember. But yes, again, it can be asked directly in the exam as well. Complaints and allegation. Just remember, complaints and allegation is different. Similarly, investigation of completed engagement is different. And similarly, EQCRR is also different. So EQCRR is very, very important. And similarly, this question, particularly this question, where more experienced engagement team member will have to review the work of the review carried out by less engagement team members. And in particularly, they will review what matters. They will particularly review these all matters. Are we clear with SQC1? Any doubt? Yes. Any doubt? So this is the exam question for this attempt, last attempt, May 2023. Want you all to write the answer for this right now. Yes, done. So it's a 4-mark question. So for 4-mark question, how many minutes you can afford in exam is 4 into 1.8. That is 7.2 minutes. Yes, done or not? Sony.
Yeah, sir, almost done. So what do you conclude? Which schedule, which clause?
Class 1 of part 1 of second.
Schedule 2,
Part 1, second schedule.
part 1, clause 1, second schedule, right? Confidentiality. Everyone on same lines? Anyone with different view? Anything else? Anything else you can think of? Yeah, so whether are we guilty?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, no, yes, no. Kapil is
Yes.
saying no.
Yes.
Nupur is saying yes. Nikita, Suneshwaran, Sagar. Yes, quickly tell me. Avija, Pooja, Dhanlakshmi. Fast, fast, fast. Why guilty then? Because of disclosure of confidential information, right? So I told you that if he was associated with the client in the previous year, then he can only tell that if at all he has submitted the same before any sort of regulatory department, even if it has submitted the financials, then he can only disclose that the financials submitted is not reliable, right? That much only. Not can go into specifics about where the fraud pertains to or where the fraud is. Here he has not even submitted or not even completed the audit. So when he was being removed, so he intimated the ROC through letter highlighting that whatever dispute, including non-existence of fixed asset, bogus creditor, etc. So we have to comment with reference to Chartered Accountants Act and the schedules thereto. So the answer will be accordingly that the confidentiality point, one more section was also there, and particularly schedule to part 1 clause 1 will have to be mentioned the entire clause language, and then given the facts of the case, he was not he was even if associated with the client, he should getting to know aware about this information and confidential information, he should refrain from disclosing the same. He should refrain from disclosing the same to any person other than client, or with the any person other than the with the permission of the client or as required by law and regulation. ठीक है? So this was the only question that was asked. Tax audit question. Yeah, this was a tax audit question for 4 marks. Tell me the clause number.
Savanthi.
Clause 17, right? And there was one more question on tax audit. See this. They were engaged into giving consultancy for agriculture of sugarcane planting and cultivation growing of sugarcane crop at a stretch of land for about 15 kilometers taken on lease from state government. The company during the year absorbed another company, AFM Limited, resulting in the latter becoming merged with this company. The purchase price was over the value of net assets taken over by 40 lakhs. The management wished to write it off over 5 years and to claim the same as depreciation for intangibles at a rates as allowed by income tax rules for intangible assets. So do you have to know down the now the income tax knowledge. This company during the year absorbed another company, AFM Limited, resulting in the latter becoming merged with this company. The purchase price over the value of the net asset. That means what here? Goodwill over and above the net purchase price over and above the net assets taken over was more by rupees 40 lakhs. Goodwill is above 40 lakhs. The management wished to write it this goodwill off in 5 years to claim the same as depreciation for intangibles at rates as allowed by income tax rules for intangible assets. Then second is with respect to the profit and loss account of the company indicated the operating revenue of consultancy fees 75 lakhs and agricultural income of 225 lakhs. The expense included material consumed for plantation and add-ons for crop growing, staff costs for the plantation, interest cost, depreciation for plantation equipment and its ancillary part. Second part is easy. Second part you can do. Try to answer the second part first. Just hold on. So quickly tell me now the answer, then we'll wrap up today. We can't do now next standard. So what is the answer for second point at least? Tell me. It's not that difficult.
Clause 21, subclause H.
With respect to section 14A, right? This I also gave you in test, right? The expenses including material consumed for plantation, add-ons for crop growing, staff cost for plantation, interest cost combined, depreciation for plantation equipment and its ancillary parts. So all these parts relates to what? Agriculture income of 225 lakh. The expense included material consumed for plantation. So this cost definitely relates to what? Agriculture income. Add-ons for crop growing also relates to 225 lakh. Staff cost also relates to that only. Interest cost is combined. So interest cost maybe we have to bifurcate. Interest cost combined maybe we have to bifurcate in ratio of 75 is to 225. Whatever be the interest cost and the ratio which is pertaining to agriculture income, that cannot be allowed. And then the depreciation also we might have to again see. So all these expenses against exempt income will be disallowed under section 14A, right? So second point was easy. First point you, I think, are not aware about is an income tax provision under clause 18, depreciation. Do you remember what was with respect to clause 18? Clause 18 was dealing with depreciation. Now here they want to,
Particulars of depreciation.
yeah, particulars of depreciation. Here they want to claim the same as depreciation for intangibles at the rates as allowed by income tax rules. So this point I failed to emphasize. I think so, but maybe while reading you might have come across this point. Then I don't know. Do you remember this point or not? Anyone? Any idea about the answer? Any opinion? Or should I tell? Yes. Can we allow this depreciation or not, or at the same rates or not, for the intangible assets or not?
No depreciation in books.
No depreciation.
In books.
No depreciation in books. You are trying to say what? That depreciation cannot be allowed for books of account, but can be allowed in income tax, or what?
Yes, yes, sir.
Huh?
Yes, sir. For intangible assets.
So depreciation under income tax for intangible assets, while you have computed the WDV of intangible assets, you will exclude the goodwill amount, goodwill arising over purchase or net asset over and above the purchase price. Whatever goodwill that you have arrived, this goodwill will be excluded while calculating the WDV, and out of this WDV now you will calculate the depreciation. So will you be allowed depreciation on 40 lakhs? Will you be allowed depreciation on 40 lakhs? Yes or no? Just now I told कि while calculating the WDV for the purpose
No.
of depreciation, this WDV will not include the goodwill amount that you arrived after taking net purchase price. That is purchase price over and above the net assets. So this is not an intangible asset which will be included in the WDV for the purpose of calculating depreciation. In overall, they are not allowing you to take this as an expense. Simply put. So while calculating the WDV value for intangible assets, you have to exclude this goodwill amount, and that is what they have framed a 2 marks question. 2 marks question out of this. Clear?
Sir,
Yeah.
could you please point out in our notes where it is mentioned? that we have to ignore the intangible asset or goodwill?
I think in clause 18.
Hmm.
If not, then it must have been in the guidance note and missed. I don't remember. Is it written in clause 18? A, B, point B, B, C, WDV वाला जो points से? Which chapter is it? What is the chapter number?
Page number 271. Audit under fiscal laws.
So okay, there has to be some more write up here which is not included here. Additions and particularly with respect to, wait, I'll just quickly check from the tax audit report. So depreciation of asset, block of asset, then rate of depreciation, then actual cost or WDV as the case may be. And then thereafter there are 2 points. One is with respect to adjustments made to WDV on account of 115 BAC BAD. So there are few assets for which depreciation will not be allowed. Do you remember 115 BAC and BAD? These are two sections for claiming taxation at lower rate of interest, right? But if you are claiming the taxation at low rate of interest, suppose 25% or 20 or 15%, then you will not be allowed deduction on certain other expenditures, for example specified business loss, or example additional depreciation, or any other sort of depreciation. So here BC, after C there is one more point CA, where it says is there any adjustment that you will have to make to WDV because you are opting to section 115 BAC BAD. This is but only and only with respect to AY 21-22 only, because that is the only AY in which you could have selected this, opted for section 115 BAC BAD. And one is point CB, where it's given adjustment made to WDV of intangible asset due to excluding value of goodwill of a business or profession. Adjustment made to WDV of intangible asset due to excluding value of goodwill of a business or profession. So you can include this both point CA and CB. After C, there is one more point CA and CB. This must be included later on and might have missed it. I might have missed it. So CA and CB, these are the 2 points. One is with respect to adjustments, or we can write here adjustments made to WDV under section 115 BAC and BAD. And one is with respect to adjustments made to WDV of intangible assets due to excluding value of goodwill of business or profession. So see, if you go through SM na study mat, so they have given for each and every point. For point A there is a huge para, how will you check? Then for actual cost or WDV they have given huge para that verify the SOD has happened for 182 days or more and the assets is used for less than 180 days. Then there is a segregation of assets. Then if asset is newly coming into existence during the previous year, the auditor has to check some samples of vouchers reflecting payment made by the assessee to check the actual cost. Then basis of determining cost of intangible assets should be examined carefully. For verifying SENVAT credit, what you need to do a long para. Then section 43, a long para is given, and in case of subsidy, the auditor can verify the existence thereof by going through the letter of appropriate authority granting the subsidy, receipt thereof. पढ़ना लिखना. So in essence what I want you to convey is there can be a case or situation where you can be told to write the procedure with respect to particular clause. Then you have to apply your brains about income tax. Definitely we cannot cover each and every provisions of income tax, but then it will become what? Tax classes, income tax class, right? So anyway, whatever points you can think of in that particular scenario, you have to specify there. 90% chances the question will come based on this only, like like based on the provisions that you have to make the adjustment here or there, or which clause you will have to make the adjustment. 99% of the chances the question will come like this only, that where you will have to make the adjustment or in which clause it will attract to. Clause reporting wise, you have to report. You have to specifically remember the reporting points. How is the format of reporting and what is the clause language of the clause. ठीक है, everything we cannot cover from the SM. So if you later on open the study material and I come across this situation multiple times that sir you have missed this, sir you have missed that, from study material it is so many things which is given but not covered in our material, but we cannot. That is what I am trying to convey here. ठीक है. So tax audit, don't worry. Anyway, out of 8 marks, I believe we were able to solve at least 6 marks, right? And this 2 marks also we would have been able. I missed it by mistake. I think this clause, which was updated maybe after introduction of section 115 BSc BAD, and CB might also have been updated only. So this seems to be a bold mark in SM. So might be updated recently, and this would have been also been, we would have been able to solve if I would have included in the book. So anyways, you can see if we are covering the entire tax audit, even the new questions that they are framing, we are able to do this. Similarly for professional ethics also, you were able to solve. Nice. And standard on auditing, we could do only SQC 1 today. We will try to start with SA 220, SA 210 and SA 230. This is pending as of today, so we'll cover that tomorrow, and then we'll try to cover up the remaining section which is not yet being done by us, because we are now running delay behind our schedule. Okay, so tomorrow is going to be a long session. Please be prepared for that. 200, 210, 220 we'll try to cover that, then 240, 250 it will take time, 260, 265, 299, and then chapter 2. So we have to cover entire 200 series tomorrow. Okay, entire essay 200 series tomorrow might take for us like 7 to 8 hours. Anyone has any problem can please tell me now.
सर 7 to 1 था क्या?